The alarm bells echoed through Station Omega-7 as an emergency signal broke through the endless chatter of space communications. Lee Hyen, a young communications officer with sharp eyes and quick fingers, immediately recognized the urgency in the transmission's pattern. He had been monitoring deep space frequencies for 3 years, but something about this signal made his heart race. The holographic displays around him came alive with alien symbols and numbers as his translation computer worked to decode the message. Lee Hyen watched the alien text slowly transform into readable words, each one more desperate than the last. His coffee grew cold as he focused entirely on the incoming transmission. "This is bad," he whispered to himself, reading the translated message twice to make sure he understood correctly. He cleared his throat and spoke loudly enough for everyone in the control room to hear. "We have a Priority 1 distress call. Zilani research vessel Silent Dawn is in serious trouble. Their location is coordinates 847.221 by 339.881, somewhere deep in the Korthok Nebula sector. Their life support systems are failing, and their engines are completely dead." The busy control room fell silent. Every technician and officer turned to look at Lee Hyun, their faces showing the same mix of concern and fear. The Korthok Nebula was famous throughout the galaxy, but not for good reasons. Supervisor Kim Nari, a woman in her 40s with graying hair and tired eyes, felt her stomach drop as she heard the location. She had seen too many ships disappear into that cursed region of space. The Korthok Nebula was like a monster that ate spaceships. Gravity fields strong enough to crush steel hulls pulled vessels off course without warning. Radiation storms could fry a ship's electronics in seconds, leaving crews blind and helpless. Massive gravitational wells acted like invisible whirlpools in space, swallowing entire fleets and never giving them back. Kim Nari pulled up the official galactic safety protocols on her screen and found what she already knew she would find. The Korthok Nebula was marked in bright red letters as a no-rescue zone. Every spacefaring species in the galaxy had agreed that the region was too dangerous for rescue operations. Too many good ships and brave crews had been lost trying to save others in that deadly maze of space storms and gravity traps. She closed her eyes for a moment, thinking about the Zilani crew members who were probably watching their oxygen levels drop while their ship drifted helplessly through that nightmare region. The Zilani were peaceful people, scientists and explorers, who had never hurt anyone. They didn't deserve to die alone in the dark, but protocols were protocols. They existed to prevent even more deaths. Mark the distress call as received, but list it as non-actionable due to location hazards, Kim Nari said quietly, her voice heavy with regret. "Send an official message of condolence to the Zilani embassy. Let them know we received their people's final transmission." Lee Hyun stared at his supervisor, his finger hovering over the transmission button that would send their response. He looked back at his screen, where the desperate alien message still glowed with urgent red text. Somewhere out there in that deadly nebula, real people were counting down their final hours, hoping someone would be brave enough or crazy enough to come for them. His hand trembled slightly as he hesitated. These weren't just numbers on a screen or dots on a star chart. These were living beings with families, dreams, and fears, just like him. Admiral Park Jin sat at the head of the curved holodeble in the command center of Earth's Hammer, the most powerful warship in the human fleet. The morning briefing had been routine until Communications Officer Bae-Soo handed him a datapad containing the intercepted Zilani distress call. Park Jin read it twice, his weathered face growing more serious with each word. Around the holodeble, representatives from various alien species were discussing trade routes and patrol schedules. But their conversation died as Park Jin shared the distress signal. The holographic display showed the location of the Silent Dawn, a tiny blinking dot surrounded by the swirling red danger zone of the Korthok Nebula Ambassador Veltar, whose species looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a spider, made clicking sounds with his mandibles as he processed the information. His compound eyes reflected the light from the hologram as he shook his triangular head sadly. Tragic, but inevitable, he chittered in his mechanical voice. The Korthak Nebula claims another vessel. We have lost 17 ships in that region over the past 50 years. It is simply too dangerous for any rescue attempt. Captain Choi Min, a veteran officer who commanded the escort destroyer, Indomitable, leaned forward with concern etched across his face. He had served alongside Park Jin for over a decade and knew the Admiral's reputation for never abandoning anyone in need. Surely someone must attempt a rescue, Choi Min pressed, looking around the table at the alien representatives. We cannot simply let these people die when we know exactly where they are. The crystalline delegate, a being that looked like a walking diamond with shifting internal lights, spoke through its electronic translation device. Its voice was cold and emotionless, like wind blowing through ice caves. Impossible, it replied, its internal lights pulsing with each word. No species in the known galaxy possesses ships capable of surviving those conditions. The gravitational forces would crush our hulls like empty cans. The radiation would cook our crews alive. The spatial distortions would tear our vessels apart. At the molecular level, other alien representatives nodded in agreement. The aquatic delegate's gills fluttered nervously as it spoke about ships being pulled into gravity wells and never seen again. The avian ambassador preened its metallic feathers while explaining how the nebula's electromagnetic storms would disable any known propulsion system. Park Jin listened to their concerns in silence, his dark eyes studying the holographic display. He thought about his own experiences in space, the storms his ships had weathered, the impossible missions they had completed. Humans had been exploring dangerous places long before they reached the stars. They had sailed through hurricanes, climbed impossible mountains, and dived to the deepest parts of Earth's oceans. The room fell silent as Park Jin stood slowly, his chair scraping against the metal floor. His uniform bore the scars of countless battles, and his hands showed the calluses of a man who had worked his way up from the bottom ranks. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who had never backed down from a fight. Helmsman, Yoon-jun, he called toward the bridge communication system. Set course for the Korthak Nebula. Maximum emergency speed. The alien representatives stared at him in complete shock. Ambassador Veltar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. Admiral, you cannot be serious, Veltar protested, rising from his seat. It's suicide. You're talking about flying into certain death. Park Jin was already moving toward the bridge, his heavy boots echoing in the suddenly quiet room. He paused at the doorway and looked back at the assembled aliens with a grim smile. Then we'll see you in hell, he replied. The third human fleet entered the Korthak Nebula like a pack of wolves charging into a burning forest. 5 massive warships cut through space in tight formation, their dark hulls already glowing from the intense radiation that would have killed most other species within minutes. Captain Odoman stood on the bridge of the rescue vessel relentless, her knuckles white as she gripped the armrests of her command chair. The ship bucked and rolled like a small boat in a hurricane as invisible gravitational waves slammed into the hull. Every few seconds, the entire vessel would shudder as another wave of twisted space-time tried to tear them apart. Odoman had experienced rough weather before, but nothing quite like this. It felt like the universe itself was trying to crush them. Science Officer Kang Ho hunched over his instrument panel, sweat beading on his forehead as he monitored the deadly environment surrounding them. His screens showed readings that should have been impossible for any living crew to survive. Radiation levels at 400% of normal space background, he reported, his voice tight with concentration. Hull temperature is climbing toward critical levels. If we stay in here much longer, the metal itself will start to weaken. The bridge lights flickered as another gravitational anomaly passed through their position. Odaman could feel her stomach lurch as the artificial gravity systems struggled to compensate for the warped space around them. "Engineering, give me a status report," she called through the communication system, raising her voice over the groaning sounds of the ship's structure. Chief Engineer Namgil's voice crackled back through speakers filled with static interference. "Shields are holding steady at 78% power. The good news is, these old Earthstorm protocols are actually working out here. Remember those hurricane simulation programs we trained with? This isn't much different, just with more radiation and gravity trying to kill us." Through the main view screen, the crew could see the Korthok Nebula in all its terrifying beauty. Massive clouds of purple and gold gas swirled around them like the colors in an oil spill, but these clouds were made of ionized particles that could fry electronic systems in seconds. Lightning storms bigger than entire planets crackled through the gas clouds, sending bolt after bolt of energy that could vaporize a city. Most species in the galaxy would look at this scene and see certain death. The gravitational anomalies alone were strong enough to turn a ship into a metal pancake. The radiation levels would cook most alien crews like food in a microwave. The electromagnetic storms would shut down any normal propulsion system and leave vessels drifting helplessly until they were torn apart. But the humans saw something different. They saw just another dangerous place that needed to be crossed to save lives. They had grown up on a planet where hurricanes, tornadoes, and volcanic eruptions were just part of daily weather reports. Their ships were built to survive conditions that would destroy vessels from more peaceful worlds. Tactical Officer Shinyu suddenly looked up from her sensor array, her eyes wide with excitement. "Captain, I've got contact on sensors. Vessel bearing 127 Mark IV, approximately 2,000 kilometers from our current position." Odaman felt a surge of hope mixed with determination. After all the warnings from the alien ambassadors about this being an impossible mission, they had actually found the Silent Dawn. The ship was still out there, still broadcasting its weak distress signal through the chaos of the nebula. She smiled grimly, the expression of someone who had never backed down from a challenge. "Found them. Now let's see if we can get them out alive." The Silent Dawn floated like a wounded bird in a small pocket of calm space, surrounded by the raging storms of the Korthok Nebula. The Zalani research vessel had once been beautiful, with its flowing biometal hull that looked more grown than built. Now that same hull was blackened and torn, with atmosphere leaking out through multiple holes where the nebula's radiation had eaten through the metal. "Captain," Odaman studied the damaged ship through her view screen, already calculating rescue procedures in her head. The Zalani vessel was maybe half the size of her own ship, built for peaceful exploration rather than surviving hostile environments. She could see flickering lights through some of the intact windows, which meant at least some of the crew was still alive. But as the human fleet moved closer to begin rescue operations, Tactical Officer Shinyu's instruments suddenly came alive with new contacts. Her face went pale as she read the sensor data, and her voice carried an edge of alarm that made everyone on the bridge look up. "Captain, we have 6 hostile ships closing fast on our position. They're coming out of the nebula's electromagnetic interference zone, moving like they've been watching us." "Oh?" Damon's expression changed from concern to cold determination. She had seen this pattern before in pirate-infested systems. The Korthok raiders were scavengers who used the deadly nebula as their hunting ground, waiting for disabled ships to drift into their territory before moving in for the kill. "All ships, form battle formation Gamma immediately," she ordered into her communication system. "Priority 1 is protecting the civilian vessel. Do not let those raiders get a clear shot at the Silent Dawn." The Korthok raider ships were nothing like the elegant Zalani vessel or the sturdy human warships. They looked like metallic sharks, sleek and predatory with swept-back hulls designed for hit-and-run attacks. Their dark hulls were covered in weapon ports and sensor arrays that gave them the appearance of deadly sea creatures swimming through space. without any warning or attempt at communication. The raiders opened fire on the helpless Silent Dawn. Bright blue energy beams lanced through space, aimed directly at the research vessel's remaining life support sections. The Korthok pirates weren't interested in taking prisoners or salvaging cargo. They wanted to eliminate witnesses and claim the valuable research data aboard the Zalani. Ship.O Damon's voice cut through the bridge like a blade. Return fire. All weapons, full spread. Show these pirates what happens when they attack civilians in front of human warships. The 5 human warships erupted into coordinated violence that lit up the nebula like a 4th of July celebration. Railgun rounds streaked through space at incredible speeds, leaving trails of superheated gas in their wake. Missile volleys launched from multiple ships. Their guidance systems locked onto the raider vessels despite the electromagnetic interference. The Relentless positioned itself directly between the attackers and the Silent Dawn, using its heavily armored hull to absorb energy blasts that would have punched straight through the research vessel. Sparks flew across the bridge as enemy fire struck their shields, but the human ship held its ground like a guard dog, protecting its wounded charge. The battle was brief, but intense. Human gunnery training and superior firepower quickly turned the tide. 3 of the raiders' ships disappeared in brilliant explosions as railgun rounds tore through their hulls. The remaining raiders, suddenly faced with opponents who could actually fight back, turned tail and fled deeper into the nebula's concealing storms. Within minutes, the space around the Silent Dawn was clear, except for expanding clouds of debris, and the steady presence of the human rescue fleet, with the raider threat eliminated. Science Officer Kang Ho immediately turned his sensors back to the damaged Zalani vessel. His instruments painted a grim picture of the Silent Dawn's condition, and his voice carried urgent concern as he delivered his report. The Zalani ship is venting atmosphere from at least 7 major breaches in the hull, he announced, his fingers dancing across the sensor controls. I'm detecting weak but stable life signs inside what's left of their command center. Looks like maybe 15 to 20 survivors, but their biological readings are dropping fast. Down in the equipment bay of the Relentless, Chief Engineer named Gil was already pulling on his environmental suit before Kang Ho finished speaking. The heavy armor looked like something designed for exploring the bottom of Earth's deepest ocean trenches, with thick plating that could withstand crushing pressure and radiation levels that would kill an unprotected human in seconds. Nam Gil had volunteered for this kind of work because he grew up in the industrial zones near active volcanoes, where his family had worked in geothermal plants that operated in conditions most people couldn't imagine. The radiation and heat inside the Korthok Nebula reminded him of home, just with the added challenge of zero gravity and hostile aliens trying to kill him. Prep the emergency airlock and get the rescue shuttle ready, he called to his team as he checked the seals on his suit. We're going in, and we're bringing everyone back. The rescue shuttle Mercy was built specifically for operations like this. Unlike the massive warships, it was small and maneuverable, with extra shielding and life support systems designed to keep rescue teams alive in the worst possible conditions. As it detached from the Relentless and moved toward the Silent Dawn, it looked like a tiny spark of hope floating through the deadly beauty of the nebula. Through the transparent aluminum viewports, Nam Gil got his first close look at the Zalani crew. They were risking their lives to save. The alien beings were taller and thinner than humans, with skin that looked like it was made from living crystal. Their faces had an elegant, almost ethereal quality. But right now, those faces showed the universal expression of people who were running out of time. The Zalani survivors were huddled together in what remained of their ship's command center, sharing the last pockets of breathable air while their vessel slowly died around them. Some were unconscious, while others watched the approaching human shuttle with a mixture of hope and disbelief. Hull breach, sealed and emergency airlock is in position, Nam Gil reported as his team worked with the methodical precision of people who had trained for exactly this scenario. beginning atmospheric exchange procedures now. Dr. Songha floated beside him in her own environmental suit, medical supplies and alien physiology scanners attached to her equipment belt. She had spent years studying different species biology, preparing for situations where human medical knowledge might be the only thing standing between alien patients and death. Their respiratory systems are failing badly in this radiation environment, she observed through her helmet communication system, watching her scanners analyze the Zalani crew's vital signs. Whatever passes for their lungs is being damaged by the nebula's ionized particles. We need to get them into our filtered atmosphere quickly, or we're going to lose them. Working as a team, the human rescue crew began the delicate process of transferring the dying Zalani to their shuttle, one by one, carrying them through an environment that should have killed every living thing within 1,000 kilometers. Dr. Cathari slowly opened her crystalline eyes as consciousness returned to her battered body. The first thing she noticed was that she could breathe without pain, something that had been impossible for the past several hours aboard her dying ship. The second thing she noticed was that she was no longer aboard the Silent Dawn at all. The medical bay around her was unlike anything in Zalani design philosophy, where her people built with flowing curves and organic shapes that mimicked natural growth patterns. This room was all straight lines and practical efficiency. The walls were made of some kind of transparent material that let her see into the corridor beyond, and the lighting was harsh and bright compared to the soft bioluminescence her species preferred. But what truly captured her attention were the creatures moving around outside her room. These were the legendary Deathworlders, the species that the rest of the galaxy spoke about in hushed, fearful whispers. For decades, stories had circulated through academic circles about the violent predators from the third planet of a yellow star, beings so dangerous that they had earned the designation of apex killers from a world of perpetual warfare. Cathari had expected them to be massive, towering giants with claws and fangs like the monsters from children's stories. Instead, she found herself looking at beings that were actually smaller than her own people. They moved with a fluid grace that reminded her of hunting cats, every motion purposeful and controlled. Their faces were surprisingly expressive, showing emotions that seemed almost familiar despite the vast differences in their species' evolution. What shocked her most, however, was how gently they were treating her and the other Zalani survivors. She watched through the transparent wall as human medical personnel carefully tended to her injured colleagues, adjusting alien medical equipment with the same attention and care they would show members of their own species. There was no sign of the savage brutality that galactic rumors attributed to these Deathworlders. Dr. Songha entered the room, her medical scanner in hand and a concerned expression on her face. She moved slowly and deliberately, clearly trying not to startle her alien patient. Songha had spent the last several hours learning how to treat Zalani physiology from the ship's medical database, adapting human medical procedures to work with crystalline-based biology. "Your people," Cathari managed to whisper in broken galactic standard, her voice weak from the ordeal, but filled with genuine curiosity. "Why did you come for us? We are complete strangers to you. We have no treaties, no trade agreements, no political connections." Songha paused in her work, setting down her medical instruments as she considered the question. In her experience, most species approached rescue operations as business transactions, calculating the potential benefits against the risks and costs involved. The fact that a Zalani was asking this question told her that their species thought the same way. "Because you needed help," she replied simply, as if the answer should be obvious to anyone. Cathari's crystalline eyes widened in amazement, their internal structure shifting color as her emotions processed this unprecedented concept. In her 40 cycles of research across the galaxy, traveling to dozens of worlds and studying hundreds of different species, she had never encountered any civilization that would risk everything for complete strangers without calculating profit, territorial gain, or political advantage. She activated the personal data recorder, implanted in her crystalline structure, and began documenting her observations. This discovery would revolutionize xenobiological understanding throughout the galaxy. The rescue operation had saved lives, but victory came with a heavy price that reminded everyone why the Korthok Nebula was considered a graveyard for spaceships. Captain Lee Sang felt his heart sink as damage reports flooded in from across his ship. The escort destroyer Valiant, a massive gravitational anomaly, had swept through their position like an invisible tsunami, warping space itself around the human fleet. The Valiant had taken the worst of it, with gravitational forces strong enough to crush mountains tearing through the ship's port engine compartment. The engine housing had crumpled like a tin can, leaving twisted metal and sparking electronics where sophisticated propulsion systems had been moments before. Engineering to bridge came the strained voice of Chief Engineer Park So through the communication system. Port engine is completely gone, sir. I'm rerouting all remaining power to the starboard systems, but we're operating at maybe 60% capacity. We can stay with the fleet, but we're not going anywhere fast. The situation aboard the Relentless was even more serious. 3 members of Namgil's rescue team had been exposed to lethal levels of radiation while working to seal the breaches in the Zalani vessel, despite their protective suits. The nebula's ionized particles had found ways through joints and seals, slowly cooking their bodies from the inside. Dr. Songha worked frantically in the medical bay, pumping radiation medication into the injured crew members while monitoring their vital signs. The men were unconscious now, their bodies fighting a battle against cellular damage that could kill them even if they made it back to proper medical facilities. Captain Choi Min's voice crackled over the fleet communication channel, filled with the urgency of someone watching his friends die around him. Admiral, I strongly recommend immediate withdrawal from the nebula. We have completed the primary rescue mission. The Zalani survivors are aboard our ships and stable. We need to get our wounded to advanced medical facilities before we lose them. On the bridge of Earth's Hammer, Admiral Park Jin stood before the main tactical display, studying the swirling patterns of destruction surrounding his fleet. The nebula seemed to be getting angrier, with new storm fronts forming like hurricanes in the ionized gas clouds. Gravitational anomalies were becoming more frequent and more powerful. The smart military decision was obvious: get out while they still could. But Park Jin looked at the tactical display showing the position of the Silent Dawn, still drifting helplessly with its engines dead and hull compromised. The Zalani crew was safe aboard human ships, but their vessel contained decades of scientific research that represented their life's work. More importantly, leaving it behind felt like abandoning part of the people they had just risked everything to save. Negative, he replied firmly, his voice carrying the authority of a man who had never abandoned anyone under his command. We don't leave anyone behind, and that includes their ship and their life's work. Engineering teams will continue repairs on the Zalani vessel. Medical teams will continue treating all patients, human and alien alike. We leave this nebula together, or we don't leave at all. Through the view screen of every human ship, crew members could see their sister vessels, taking defensive positions around the crippled Silent Dawn. Their hulls glowed with radiation exposure, like dying stars, but their formation remained rock solid, a wall of human determination against the hostile universe. When the human rescue fleet finally emerged from the deadly swirls of the Korthak Nebula, they carried with them news that would change how the entire galaxy viewed the species from Earth. The sight of the battered human warships, carefully escorting the repaired Zalani research vessel to safety, became one of the most widely broadcast images in galactic history. News networks across hundreds of different worlds picked up the story within hours. The footage showed human ships with hulls blackened by radiation exposure, their armor plating scorched and dented from gravitational anomalies that should have crushed them completely. Yet there they were, flying in perfect formation around the Silent Dawn. which now had its engines running again thanks to human engineering teams working in conditions that would have killed most other species. The story spread like wildfire through galactic communication networks. Species that had never heard of humans before suddenly found themselves watching recordings of these strange Deathworlders flying into certain death to save complete strangers. The most shocking part wasn't just that they had succeeded, but that they had refused to leave until everyone was safe. On the massive Galactic Council station that orbited the diplomatic world of Concordia, Ambassador Veltar found himself reviewing intelligence reports that he could barely believe. His insectoid features twitched with amazement as he processed the information, and he immediately transmitted his findings back to his home colony. The preliminary reports are almost impossible to accept. He sent in his official communication. The humans lost 3 warships to severe damage and had 17 crew members seriously injured during the operation. By any reasonable military standard, they should have abandoned the rescue mission once the costs became too high. Instead, they refused to leave until every single alien survivor was not only rescued, but their damaged vessel was repaired and ready for independent flight. The ambassador paused in his transmission, his compound eyes reflecting the data displays around him. They fought off Korthok raiders, navigated gravitational anomalies that would have destroyed our finest vessels, and remained in that death trap of a nebula for over 16 hours to complete a rescue mission that our own military experts declared impossible. But the most significant impact came from an unexpected source. Dr. Cathari, now fully recovered from her ordeal and back to her research work, published a preliminary scientific paper that sent shockwaves through academic circles across the galaxy. Her study, titled Altruistic Behavior in Apex Predator Species, a case study of human rescue operations, became the most downloaded research document in galactic academic history. Her findings challenged everything that xenobiologists thought they knew about predator species and evolutionary behavior. After 40 cycles of studying different species across known space, she wrote, "I can state with scientific certainty that these Deathworlders possess behavioral patterns we have not documented in any other sapient species." Her most important conclusion became a quote that was repeated in universities and government halls throughout the galaxy. Humans demonstrate a willingness to suffer personal loss in order to prevent greater suffering among complete strangers. This is not pack behavior protecting family groups, nor is it territorial defense driven by resource competition. This appears to be genuine altruism on a scale that evolutionary science suggests should not exist in apex predator species. The galaxy began to see Earth's children in a completely different light than the violent savages they had imagined. 6 months had passed since the dramatic rescue in the Korthak Nebula, and the entire galaxy was still talking about what the humans had accomplished. Admiral Park Jin stood on the wide observation deck of Haven's Gate, a massive new space station that had been built specifically to coordinate rescue operations across known space. Through the reinforced windows, he watched something that would have been impossible to imagine just a year ago. Human and Zilani engineers were working together in the station's construction bays, building the next generation of rescue vessels that combined human durability with Zilani scientific innovation. The ships taking shape in those bays looked like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. The Zilani engineers, with their tall, crystalline bodies and elegant movements, worked alongside stocky human technicians who seemed to treat impossible engineering challenges as just another day at work. Park Jin smiled as he watched Chief Engineer Namgil scratch his head, while a Zilani scientist explained the complex theory behind crystalline energy matrices, using holographic displays that made the alien technology look like magic. The political changes had been even more dramatic than the technological ones. The Galactic Council, which had initially viewed humans as dangerous primitives who were too violent to be trusted with important responsibilities, had completely reversed their position. They had formally requested that humans take leadership of the newly formed Emergency Response Coalition, finally acknowledging that some rescue situations required the unique capabilities that only Deathworlders possessed. The Zilani had become humanity's strongest advocates throughout the galaxy, sharing their advanced medical technology and scientific knowledge in exchange for human protection of their research expeditions. Dr. Kethley's research paper had opened doors that diplomatic negotiations never could have achieved, proving, through scientific evidence, that humans weren't the savage conquerors that galactic stereotypes had portrayed. Captain Odaman approached across the observation deck, her boots clicking on the polished metal floor as she carried a datapad filled with their latest assignments. Her expression carried the same mix of determination and compassion that had made her such an effective rescue commander during the Korthok operation. "Admiral, we've received 17 new distress calls just this week," she reported, scrolling through the emergency requests on her tablet. 3 of them are in hazardous space that other galactic species have declared too dangerous to enter. 2 are in radiation zones, and 1 is near a collapsing star system. Park Jin nodded, unsurprised by the numbers. Word had spread throughout the galaxy that there was finally a species willing and able to attempt rescues in the most dangerous regions of space. Ships that would have been written off as total losses were now sending emergency signals because they knew someone might actually come for them. "Then we'd better get moving, Captain," he replied, watching Namgil finally nod in understanding as the Zilani engineer's explanation clicked into place. "People are counting on us, and we've never been the kind of species to let people down when they need help." As Earth's Hammer and her escort fleet departed Haven's Gate for their next rescue mission, the galaxy had learned an important lesson that would reshape interstellar relations for generations to come. Sometimes the most dangerous species in the universe was also the most willing to risk everything for complete strangers. The Deathworlders had finally found their place among the stars, not as the conquerors that everyone had feared, but as the guardians that everyone desperately needed.